Hi, this is MTV214. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Thanks to subscribers new and old. This is a book review. I got this book from a friend to borrow. It's called Factory Girls by Leslie T. Chang. It's about like the changing lifestyles in China over the years. It takes place in the early 2000s, like 2000 or like 2004ish, and how the dynamics have changed. That people, mostly like females, move from villages in China, which like farming is the main job, to like working in factories in the cities. And like one city here is like Dugang, like Doung, I can't pronounce it exactly. So they move there for work when they're like, some don't even graduate high school. Then when they're like maybe like 15 to 17, they move from the villages to the city to look for work, to work in factories like toy factories, clothing factories. One thing that's mentioned about it is like Coach Bags factory in China, and that they actually have an order to fill, so like they make more than that, and they make friends with the security guard, so like the extra that's over above the order, some of them take that for themselves and like use it, like might give as a gift, use it for themselves. But in China, they don't really like think, oh, like this isn't really that valuable, when in America it sells for so much money, a Coach bag. But like all sorts of factories, and that it shows like how some of them might work there for a few months, quit, go to another one, like, switch from job to job, different factories. But the factory work isn't that fun. It's working like 11 hours every day, and they might have like 2 Sundays off a month for some of them. And sometimes like get pay withheld. If they're like fired, they don't get the pay that they're owed. And one part of it is like going to like government for help, like government agency for help with that, and didn't really get much help. Get like the runaround, sent to this department, that department, and then one part in it finally gets like official like brochure paperwork saying it, and goes back to the other department that she was already at, and like they have to help her, but they make it difficult, sort of like America with the DMV and other stuff. But that's bureaucracy in general, I guess. But it's very interesting book. So the author Leslie, she interviewed several people that over the time, some she like went struck conversations with, but like wasn't able to keep in contact with them. But she was able to with a few young women, and like learn how it was with factories and different things, and like family dynamics. One interesting thing with the factories is that like other than that is that they have dorms for the factories, so you're not just like working there, like you have like a living place, and like with food, so it's sort of like they run your life. It's sort of like a company town, but like a factory. And they could like withhold your pay and not pay you for a certain amount of time, and then they pay you like after a month or what have you. And it's not that much money compared to America. It said maybe like $500 to $1,000 working a month, like just about every day in the month, and maybe having 1 or 2 Sundays off for 11 hours. So it's very difficult, but it's sort of better life in a way that like they choose, and they have some free time like in the evening to be with others. And one other thing that they do is like learn English, go to like schools to learn English, and some of them aren't so good, that helpful to learn it. But they're trying to like get higher in the factory to do like human resources and different managerial positions. One of them switches from that to doing sales for a company, and like has some success in that, and then like goes back to factory work, and then goes back to the sales later on. So there's also like corruption with that, with like kickbacks and other different corruption with it, as like that's human nature. But there's a lot of different things that go on with that. It also has like a personal story of like the girls that go work in a factory, like it's a patriarchal society. They thought like, do what the father, the parents want, but then they go to the factory, they're making money, they go and send money home, and that sort of like elevates their status, and like, they're paying for their education for their younger siblings, and that like, the younger siblings might come out to work to make money, send it home, and the parents don't like it in a way, but like, they sort of like it when they're getting money coming to them to pay for things, and like help modernize the houses with like a hot water heater and other different things, and like, clothing, what have you. So it changes the family dynamics for like teenage girl to be like the leader of the family because she's like the breadwinner in a way. Um, and that like, these factories could be like like, a day's trip or more, traveling by train to like, get to their village for New Year, which is, I'm pretty sure, February, if I remember correctly, like the Chinese New Year. um or that's like a lunar year, I'm not sure, but like it definitely changes like their dynamics, and sort of community is very big, but it's more individualized with like, moving to live in a city, work in a factory, and that like everyone's from a different place there, and the parents back home don't really want you to get married to someone that's from a faraway village. They would want it somewhere that's like more local to where that they are. um but it shows, in later in the book it shows about like a wedding ceremony, which is not formal like how we think of it, like, with like a pastor or a priest officiate, or rabbi, what have you, officiating a wedding. It's sort of like there's none of that, but there's different like religious rites that they do with like a dowry, and then having a big lunch, and then traveling to the husband's home, and then they have like another meal and like different things, and that it's sort of like interesting. It's different. It's not like it's formal, but not formal as like we in the West think of it. So it's a very interesting book. The author Leslie also goes on about like looking to her own family history. Like she's from like America. Her parents immigrated to America. Her grandfather was in China. He moved to America for education and then went back to China, and she's like, looking to family history about him and other family. She hears stories from some. The majority seem to think, oh, like, it's not that special family history, that like, we have problems, everyone has problems, and there's nothing worth mentioning. One of her family, I'm pretty sure it's a cousin, he did a lot of research, like there was this sort of falling out, like with something happened with the government, and then like, wants to be like, shown that his family is innocent. And he did a lot of family research, so like her talking to him, she was sort of scared too, because like heard not so nice things about him, but like he told him a lot. One of her aunts had a more like personal side to it, and like she wrote poetry relating to family history, so like she gets to see about some of her own family history, which is interesting. um the family is like compound. They like, were wealthy at one point, that they're the the land they had and like home they had was torn down with like different things with communism in China, and it actually is a park now. So there was like a stela in there that's blank. There's no writing, and one of her family members, I'm pretty sure his uncle, had like sent a letter to the government asking like, to have inscription that like he'll pay for it. They don't have to worry. And then they didn't really answer. He sent another letter, and then like, was able to get that done. She goes to visit this like grave site of her grandfather. His bones were already like, his remains were moved and scattered elsewhere, but like it's like a symbol of him. So it's like she visited that, and it's in a public park, so it's sort of like different because like, there's people exercising and walking and doing this or that. But it's very interesting, and like to see how her family changed, and like dynamics in China have changed to be more like individualistic, and like everywhere that like human nature, that you're gonna like think to like do for yourself and not always the right thing. One other interesting thing about the book was like about like online dating was said, and how like one of the women interviewed like, you know, said about like online dating, and that like people that she knew tried to go and talk to her with a fake account. So it's like, you know, that they're cheating, like breaking up and different relationship things, about parents not accepting a boyfriend that they bring home with the new year because, like, you know, he's from far away, and this and that. But it's like more individualistic, and that the factory work is not easy. It's very difficult, long hours, and not so much pay. And it, the book mentions about with like not really anyone having health care, so that's like another concern about with people's health. So it's very interesting to get like this glimpse into the jobs and like life and culture in China. I went to a client today that's like originally from China, and I asked her about what that is, and she said it's like job listings there, which makes perfect sense with like, you know, that's what it's about. So it's an interesting book. A friend of mine got this from a friend that he used to work with, and so like I don't know exactly where that friend got it from, because it says like not for sale, bound galley. So, but it was an interesting book. I don't know if it has a barcode on the back. No, it doesn't even have a barcode, because it's like not for sale. So I don't know what's up with that, but it's definitely an interesting book to look into and get an inside look in like culture in China and work related. Well, thanks for watching. Subscribe, comment, like, share. More videos to come of figure reviews, book reviews, what have you. Take care.